From the dark alleys to the royal courts of the Middle Ages, here are the strangest prohibitions that absurdly controlled your life. We start our list with a color that could get you killed. If your favorite color in the Middle Ages was purple, you were in big trouble. The color of your clothes didn't determine your taste. It determined whether you lived or died, because wearing this color meant directly challenging the king. The problem wasn't the color purple itself, but how it was made. Specifically, the vibrant, fade-resistant purple known as Tyrian purple was the most expensive substance in the world. This dye was obtained by crushing the shells and processing the secretions of thousands of a specific type of sea snail, murex, found only in the Mediterranean. Tens of thousands of snails were required to produce just 1 gram of dye. For this reason, Tyrian purple was many times more expensive than gold. This incredible cost made purple the ultimate symbol of power and wealth. In ancient Rome, emperors wore togas of solid purple. This tradition carried over into the Middle Ages. Purple became the color of royalty, the empire, and the highest ranks of the church. It was associated with divinity and sacred power. This is why sumptuary laws came into play. Kings across Europe strictly regulated who could wear which color. During the reign of Queen Elizabeth I of England, the right to wear purple was granted only to the Queen and her immediate royal family. For a peasant or a wealthy merchant to wear purple wasn't just seen as trying to look rich. It was perceived as a challenge to the king's authority. The punishment for breaking this law could range from fines to confiscation of property or even imprisonment. Today, we can walk into a store and buy a t-shirt in any color we want. But remember, there was a time when that purple t-shirt you're wearing meant you were defying an emperor. This was a ban on a color you could wear, but color wasn't the only thing officials were obsessed with. The second strange ban on our list was about the shape of a shoe. Did you know you could be imprisoned in the Middle Ages just for the tip of your shoe? In fact, these shoes were considered so dangerous and ridiculous that the church declared them sinful and the devil's claws. In the 14th and 15th centuries, a bizarre fashion called poulaines, Polish shoes, began. These were shoes with excessively long and pointed toes. It was a status symbol. The longer your shoe tip, the richer you were. The logic was simple. You couldn't work in a field, walk quickly, or even ride a horse with such long-toed shoes. It was the most arrogant way of saying, I don't need to do physical labor. The fashion soon got out of control. The shoe tips of nobles grew up to 60 centimeters, 2 feet, long. Men had to attach chains from the tips to their knees or waists just to avoid tripping. This situation sparked a moral debate as well as practical problems. The church saw these shoes as a symbol of vanity, luxury, and immorality. Some clerics even preached that these pointy tips encouraged lewd thoughts. They even caused problems on the battlefield. It's rumored that some French knights at the Battle of Agincourt had to cut off the long tips of their shoes just to fight. Finally, states had to intervene. In England, King Edward IV passed a sumptuary law in 1463. This law strictly limited the length of shoe tips according to a person's social status. A shoe fashion was taken so seriously that it antagonized both the church and the crown. It seems comical to us today, but at the time, the tip of your shoe determined your place in society. Kings cared about what you wore, but what you played was also a vital issue for them. Our third ban is about a game that threatened national security: football. Did you know you could be arrested for playing football in the Middle Ages? Yes, the football we know. English kings repeatedly banned this game, seeing it as a useless waste of time. But the reason wasn't just the chaos or violence, as you might think. The real reason was that it directly threatened national security. Back then, the game was called mob football, and it was total chaos. There were no rules, no field boundaries. All the men from 2 villages would try to get a ball made from an inflated pig's bladder to the town square of the other village, miles away. In the process, fields were trampled, fences were broken, and serious fights broke out. But the real danger was something else. The origin of the ban was purely military and strategic. Medieval England was at war, especially the 100 Years' War with France, and the army's strength relied on one thing: the long bow. These bows were a formidable weapon capable of piercing armor. But mastering this weapon required immense strength, which was only possible by practicing for hours every Sunday after Mass, starting from childhood. And that's where the problem began. Young men were skipping this mandatory, boring archery practice and choosing to play this foolish game of football instead. King Edward III, in his edict of 1365, explicitly banned football and other worthless games. The edict commanded all able-bodied men to practice archery, and only archery, in their spare time. So, the reason for the football ban wasn't immorality or violence, but the king's fear of a weakened national defense. It's unbelievable that a sport could directly threaten a nation's military strategy. Football was banned for a practical reason: military service. But our fourth ban, the ban on fur, was purely social and much more restrictive. In the Middle Ages, the type of fur you wore could determine the difference between your life and your fortune. Wearing the wrong fur wasn't just a fashion faux pas, it was a serious crime punishable by imprisonment. These rules were part of a brutal social control mechanism known as sumptuary laws. Their purpose was simple: everyone knows their place. After the plague in the 14th century, the number of laborers decreased, and surviving peasants and artisans began to earn more money. This newly wealthy merchant class began to dress like nobles, to live like them. This situation fundamentally shook the 1,000-year-old social hierarchy. Fur was the clearest way to make this distinction. The laws clearly stipulated who could wear which fur ermine. That famous white, black-spotted fur was strictly the monopoly of the royal family. A duke or count could wear valuable furs like sable, lynx, or chinchilla. But a wealthy merchant or craftsman had to make do with fox, beaver, or rabbit fur at most. A peasant wearing fur was unimaginable. Their lot was coarse wool or linen. These laws were taken so seriously that guards at the city gates had the authority to inspect people's clothing. If you were caught wearing the wrong fur, it was immediately confiscated, and you were fined heavily. This wasn't just a dress code. It was an economic weapon designed to prevent social mobility. Your fur showed not who you were, but who you were allowed to be. Kings controlled what you could wear, but that control extended all the way to your stomach. Our fifth ban is about an animal that was considered treason to eat. Even if you were starving to death at a medieval banquet, touching that roasted swan in front of you could cost you your life. Why? Because that swan likely belonged directly to the king, and eating it could be considered equivalent to treason. You may have heard that swans, especially in England, technically still belong to the king today. The roots of this tradition lie in the rigid status symbolism of the Middle Ages. In that era, food wasn't just for sustenance, it was also for displaying power, wealth, and authority. Unlike chicken, pork, or beef, which were accessible to everyone, some animals were considered noble. Swans were at the absolute pinnacle of this hierarchy. Their majestic appearance, white feathers, and elegance made them a symbol of purity and nobility. That's why they were called royal fowl. Bringing a cooked swan to the table at a banquet, with its feathers meticulously reattached, sometimes with camphor put in its beak to make it look like it was breathing fire, was the ultimate show of status for the host. Along with swans, cranes, peacocks, and even dolphins were in this noble food category, the right to hunt, own, and eat these animals belonged only to the king and the highest-ranking nobles, lords and dukes, to whom he personally granted this privilege. For a peasant or an ordinary citizen to harm, hunt, or eat a swan was considered a direct insult to the king's property and authority. The punishment was extremely severe. That swan was a brutal symbol reminding you of the unchangeable boundaries of your social class. The Middle Ages were full of rules that shaped every step, every bite, every color, and even every game you played. But one thing was never banned: your curiosity. If you want to keep exploring the strangest corners of history, if you want more forbidden stories, forgotten laws, and unbelievable truths, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next story might be one they never wanted you to hear.